Welcome back to The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Calistro Farrier. Well, the highly anticipated judge decision by the International Court of Justice on the charge of genocide brought before the court by South Africa based on what is happening right now in the Gaza Strip. The decision has been handed down on Friday morning. The decision came. The court has ordered Israel to take measures to prevent genocide from happening. They've also been asked that the court has stopped short of ordering a ceasefire, but they have asked that Israel try not to have civilians killed and to try to not have people killed and to restore the humanitarian infrastructure to ensure that aid goes through. The court seems to have stopped just short of what the world was expecting, which is a call for a ceasefire and condemnation of what's happening in Gaza. The world viewing the situation as genocide, and as South Africa took the case before the ICJ, charging genocide against Israel. Joining me on the program now are Lalu Hanuman. He is part of the organization advocacy group in the Caribbean known as Caribbean Against Apartheid in Palestine. We've had him on the program a number of times before, as well as Ambassador Linda Sobeh. She is posted to the region to speak to me, to react to the ruling, the decision that came down from the ICJ, and to talk about the way forward. The decision is not really binding. Will Israel do what they have asked, which is to stop the killing and to return some dignity to the people of Palestine who have been suffering tremendously? Almost 30,000 people killed since this action began on October 7 last year. Lady, gentlemen, welcome to The Narrative.
Good morning.
All right. Well, it's good to have the both of you on to speak about this. I'm sure that the decision handed down by the ICJ is not exactly as you were expecting, but it is something I would get first from Ambassador Sobeh. Your reaction to the decision that has been made by the court, the order, Israel being ordered to take measures to stop the catastrophe that's happening.
Thank you for having me once again, and on such an important and awaited day to hear the decision of the International Court of Justice. As we welcome first the ruling initially to accept and welcome South Africa's bold position to take it to the ICJ, but we were looking for an immediate ceasefire. We were looking and needing the ICJ to mention its 75 years. It did not start October 7th. The ICJ started by mentioning October 7th, forgetting the 75 years of displacement, of occupation, of atrocity, of genocide that Israel has been committing against Palestine and the Palestinian people. It's a clear violation of the Genocide Convention. And for us to have to await another month, that means how many thousands we will be killed during that. We call on all the states to abide and respect the ruling of not aiding or supporting Israel in its genocide, in its clear violation of the Genocide Convention. We call on all states to halt all weapons transfer to Israel or to assist Israel in its genocide against Palestine and the Palestinians in any way or shape. We call on the ICJ to continue to look into all the atrocity and genocide that Israel is committing. There is over 26,000 martyrs assassinated. Gaza is destroyed. Let's not leave behind the West Bank also. We need Israel to know that no state is above the law. No state is above the justice. They need to stop their atrocity, their culture of genocide, their culture of destruction, their their culture of lying, their culture of disposing the Palestinian people of their land, of their homes, destroying everyone. Have you seen the videos? Have you seen all what they have been doing?
Now, I just want to go here to Lalu, where the ICJ has asked ordered Israel to take all measures to prevent acts of genocide, but just stopping short of demanding a ceasefire. Is it surprising that this is as far as they were willing to go? I mean, the genocide, the charge of genocide, the court, I'm being told the court may take a very long time to decide, yes, this is genocide or no, it's not. But they've asked them to stop, take preventative measures. Do you think they've gone far enough? Are you surprised that they didn't go further? What's your take?
I'm not surprised, but I was hopeful they would be more innovative and uphold justice better. They made a statement calling for the immediate release of hostages, so-called, but they could just as well have also called for the immediate cessation of hostilities. They've made very bland, feeble orders. Speaking as a lawyer, they upheld legal principles in terms of their reasoning. I can't fault them on their reasoning, the background. Their judgment was very erudite and well reasoned. But when it came to the orders, they fell down, I would say. Whether that's because they're intimidated them or divided amongst themselves as to the way forward. In fact, I was very surprised that two judges also voted against very bland orders. I mean, one of the orders was to avoid committing genocide. Now, that can be applied across the board to anybody. An order can be made against me saying not to commit genocide. It doesn't mean I'm guilty of genocide, but yet two of the judges voted against that. And then there was another order saying that the Genocide Convention should not be violated. Again, it's a very bland statement. It's not accusing anybody of committing genocide. And yet two judges voted against that. I suspect there might well have been evangelical Christian sort of motivations behind that, because the Genocide Convention has to be upheld by all signatories, and that's all the orders are in effect saying. But yet they voted against that. So in other words, they're condoning the acts of genocide. As Her Excellency Linda Sobeh pointed out, their starting point was the 7th of October, 2023. There was no mention of the previous 70 years, the atrocities being committed, the stealing of the Palestinian land, the demolishing of houses, the imprisonment of thousands and thousands of Palestinians, the millions of refugees who've been displaced over the years, etc. So anyway, the starting point is something of a falsehood or an incorrect way of looking at the historical realities. But and also, as Her Excellency Linda Sobeh pointed out, they've been given a whole month, Israel, to report back to the court, which is ridiculous. The maximum they should have been given is 7 days. This is a matter of urgency. In a month, another 30,000 people could have been murdered. I'm not impressed by their judgment. As I said, well, their reasoning was fine, but in terms of I'm not impressed by their orders at all.
No, Ambassador, do you have any expectations that Israel will even pay attention to these orders from the International Court? I understand even as the judgment was being delivered, there was bombing in Khan Yunis.
Honestly, no. I remember the ruling and how happy we were against the apartheid wall, and the wall still exists. So Israel never listens to any ruling. That's why we are calling on all states to respect and not to aid them and not to assist them in any way or shape, or in transferring or in selling or any way. Israel is above the law. They think they are above the law, and they will not listen, and they will not stop. And I am sure my brother Lalu shares with me the same views. Do you think they will stop? They will not stop. And they are giving a yellow card to continue for a full month. I feel this will continue for several months. If they are saying they are trying to free the hostages, as they say, What are they doing in West Bank? Is there any hostages in West Bank? Do we see the hunger that's going on in Gaza? Do we see the cold weather? Do we see when they sent all the Palestinian people to move to a safe place to the south and then they started bombing the
And then
south?
bombed it, yeah.
They asked them to move to Khan Yunis, they're bombing Khan Yunis. They asked them to move all the way down south and they started burning the tents where 1.9 million Palestinians between schools, UN schools, and hospitals and churches, they're bombing everything. I do
So,
not
so,
have
so,
any
so, so even
information.
when the court asks orders that they punish those who perpetrate acts of genocide, that as well rings hollow for you, Ambassador.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because to start with, they if they have accepted or abide by the rules, they would have not occupied a land 75 years ago. They would not have destructed all the homes. They would have not assassinated all the Palestinians that they have been assassinating for 75 years. And I keep repeating the 75 because I want it to sink in everyone's mind. This started 75 years ago.
Now, Lalu,
And when you see, when
why
I'm sorry,
Ambassador, go ahead, Ambassador, please do. Go ahead.
when
You
you
were saying?
see, when you see still with the judges, and that we are thankful for those who voted yes, you still see two, one voting ad hoc and the second voting no. I just want to leave this thought. With all these lives assassinated, with all this destruction, with all this hunger, with all these war crimes, with all these places of religion, hospitals, schools, journalists, UN employees assassinated. And still there's a judge who studied law and swore that they will respect, they still vote no to stop this genocide, to cease fire. I was awake very early this morning, hoping to see immediate ceasefire. Go ahead, my brother Lalo, and sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no, that's quite all right, Ambassador. But do you feel, Lalu, that this would put, is there any way this decision is going to put any kind of pressure on Israel and its allies, the UK, the UK, the United States, those states that are helping to arm Israel, helping to keep Israel strong, and basically supporting this human catastrophe that is unfolding with the Palestinian people? Do you think any kind of pressure at all can be brought to bear based on the decision that has been given by the court this morning?
Well, I'm hopeful that at least the arms suppliers might hesitate a little bit before they supply arms. Britain, as you know, has been supplying arms to Israel, but most particularly America. I understand every day something like 4 transport aircrafts land in Israel carrying bombs and other weaponry. So far, America has supplied thousands of tank shells and other explosive devices. So I'm hopeful that at least the arms suppliers, both in terms of government officials and also in terms of individuals who work for those companies, might hesitate somewhat because they now open themselves to the possibility of being charged with genocide. Because under the Genocide Convention, it specifically states anybody who aids and abets a genocide, or words to that effect, is also guilty of genocide. And if you're supplying arms to a state that is committing genocide, then clearly you're also culpable. But I've noted that both Netanyahu and the leadership power party have made statements, in effect, calling the ICJ anti-Semitic. It's absurd. Any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic in their eyes. So they're saying that the ICJ is attacking a Jewish state. Therefore, it's anti-Semitic. You know, it's totally absurd and ridiculous, and it's something of a paradox because the Genocide Convention came in 1945, from recollection. It was formulated, and when the relevant amount of signatories came, I think it was in the 1950 or thereabouts, it came into force. But it came about because of the Holocaust against particularly the Jewish people. Of course, people forget there were also Romanis and homosexuals and trade unionists and communists who were also part of the Holocaust. But most of the victims were Jews. And today, it's a state that claims to be a Jewish state, forgetting the fact that 20% of the population are Palestinians, that is committing genocide. It's in effect a very sad indictment of the state of Israel. A lot of Zionists try to conflate Zionism and the state of Israel with being Jewish, which in effect leads to anti-Semitism. Israel is the greatest instigator globally of anti-Semitism. It is the crucible of anti-Semitism. It creates it. It thrives on it. Its very existence is based on the concept of anti-Semitism. And this nonsense that the leader of the Jewish Power Party and Netanyahu are now coming out with, saying because the ICJ have made rulings against the Jewish state, they're anti-Semitic, is beyond absurd. But we know the Western governments won't say anything about it, won't censor them. But as I said, I'm hoping that the arms suppliers at least might wake up a bit and take notice.
No, and Israel coming across there as the bully of the world, with the backing of two other bullies. And at this point, do we feel that other countries may, because of this ruling, step forward and announce sanctions, cut diplomatic ties? I know that, Lalu, you have been very disappointed that CARICOM countries have, apart from voting yes to the ceasefire, with the exception of one country, and the UN called for ceasefire. Apart from that, the CARICOM has had a hands-off approach on this matter. I know that is a disappointment for you. But do you believe that this ruling now, we can see more countries stepping forward? Of course, what Belize or Brazil, I keep mixing them up, did cut diplomatic ties. But can we see more of that happening now that the decision has been given?
Well, to start with, I must say that South Africa deserves maximum applause and kudos for taking the lead as they did. And given their history, it's right that they should have done that. But it's also our history, and it would have been right for us to join South Africa in this action. Our history of enslavement, our history of genocide in terms of the indigenous peoples, our history of colonialism and imperialism, at the receiving end of those things. We should be in the vanguard fighting against racism, in the vanguard fighting against apartheid, in the vanguard fighting against genocide and the denial of human rights. But unfortunately, with the exception of Belize, we've been very timid. Our Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Mottley, she made a statement saying that what's happening in Palestine, in Gaza in particular, is a televised genocide. But it's all hot air and hyperbole because it's not backed up by it. She should have severed relations with Israel. She should have recognized the state of Palestine. We have a representative in Tel Aviv, Barbados does, that's come out. He's written a letter in the local media here supporting the genocide. I called upon the Prime Minister to immediately dismiss him. How can you have somebody representing Barbados who is supporting genocide? He's actually written an article in support of genocide in the local newspapers. And this is absurd and ridiculous, and it's a sad indictment of CARICOM. I personally wrote a letter to the Secretary General of CARICOM asking CARICOM to jointly suspend relations with Israel. I wrote this since October last year. I'm yet even to get an acknowledgement. Nothing. It's terrible. It's more than regrettable. It's disgraceful that CARICOM has not taken any action. We were in the vanguard when it came to apartheid in South Africa, but when it comes to Palestine, which both Nelson Mandela and Mr. Tutu have said are the most severe forms of apartheid in existence, we have done very little. We've made empty statements. Anybody can make hollow, vacuous statements. It's action we need, not hot air.
And do you think that CARICOM feels pressured because of the tremendous amount of leeway that Israel seems to have in the world, that they may be worried of coming afoul of the United States, the United Kingdom, which I don't see why, but because there are other powers emerging in the world, there's China and so on. But do you feel that they may feel pressured because of the
Well,
support
I mean,
that Israel is getting?
I made a statement to the media a while ago, I think it was November last year, calling for the severing of diplomatic relations with Israel. And a local Barbadian commentator, in response, said that Israel assists and assists the Caribbean with our football team and security issues and so on. Therefore, we shouldn't. In other words, what he's saying is Barbados should be a prostitute, because they're providing us with certain meager things. It's pouring outside. I hope it doesn't affect the audio.
No, you're
Um,
fine.
uh, we should continue with our relationships with Israel. This is a Judas prostitute approach, a whorish approach to the situation. We should be taking a principled stand against the genocide, against the apartheid, against the racism that exists in Israel. But unfortunately, we're not, with the exception of Belize.
But it's beginning to feel like an embarrassment as well, that almost like your parent who totters home drunk every day, and you don't want your friends to see him because he's a drunk. It's almost embarrassing to look at our leaders in the way that they have remained almost silent on this matter. And when most of the world is saying that something needs to be done, that what is happening there is genocide.
I fully agree with you. I fully agree with you. I mean, people are going to take offense to what I'm about to say, but a number of the Caribbean so-called independent countries are really Bantustans. In South Africa, the apartheid regime set up these so-called independent states called Bantustans, which incidentally were only recognized by Taiwan and the State of Israel. Israel collaborated fully with apartheid in South Africa. In fact, they collaborated on the nuclear program as well, and weaponry in general. But diplomatically, Israel and Taiwan were the only two countries that recognized those Bantustans. Those Bantustans had their own flags, their own national anthem, they had their own stamps, they had their own so-called army and air force. And the same thing applies to many of, I'm not naming names, but a number of these Caribbean countries, in effect, are just Bantustans. We're just so-called independent sovereign states. But in reality, we are controlled still by London and Washington. They decide our policy. It's not locally done. I know places like Martinique and Guadeloupe are clamoring for independence, and it's right that they're doing that. But in reality, if they're going to also turn out to be Bantustans, then what's the point of independence? We claim to be a republic, but what has changed? Nothing has changed. It's just the name has changed. It's so much hyperbole and hot air.
Now, one of the things that the decision by the ICJ is calling on Israel to do is to rebuild the humanitarian infrastructure. We saw the devastation of hospitals. I mean, one of the things that you do not touch in war, and the press as well. I mean, 84 journalists killed at my last count. And two things that in war you do not touch: the media, the press, and hospitals. Hospitals totally destroyed. Do you think, Ambassador, that the Palestinians will get any help from Israel to rebuild the hospitals? What will happen there in terms of the rebuilding of the health infrastructure?
The help that we need is from the world, and we need Israel to stop the occupation. This is the only help they can do. They are destructing, they are committing a genocide, war crime. Do you expect them to rebuild? We do not want the occupation to rebuild our country. We just want them to go. We want an independent state, recognized fully in the United Nations. It is time for all countries that do not recognize Palestine to step on the right side of justice, of what's right, of what's correct, to recognize fully the state of Palestine, to recognize fully the right of Palestinians for self-determination. So I do not expect anything from Israel. I expect them to continue their genocide. I expect them to continue their destruction. I expect them to continue committing war crime. This is my expectation. Do you think when I see, for example, yesterday, Al Nasser Hospital converted into a cemetery because people cannot even move and so many bodies and so many assassinated, they converted all the front and backyard of the hospital to a collective cemetery. When I see dogs eating bodies, when I see humans and my people eating dog food and rabbit food, crushing it and converting it in bread to keep their little ones alive. When I see a hungry and cold Palestinian kid walking around awaiting a scoop of food, and there is not even one scoop to put in his pot to go back to feed his other brothers because their parents has passed away. I have no positive or good expectation from the occupation. We need to end a 75 years of occupation. This is my expectation.
Now, you spoke, Lalu, the last time you were here, you spoke about boycotting Israel. How is that going? Any intensification of the action? I'm sure
Yes,
Ambassador Sobeh, Her Excellency Ambassador Sobeh would appreciate that kind of support as well.
Yes.
well, just recently, the Caribbean Against Apartheid group had a meeting, and we've set up a subcommittee dealing exclusively with what's known as BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction Israel, to do with Israeli goods. And the main product that we're looking at in the context of Barbados is the Sabra hummus, which Massy and Cost You Less and a number of other outlets, Price Smart, actually sell. And I think they're sold elsewhere in the Caribbean as well. Sabra is owned by an Israeli company.
Sabra,
So that's
Sabra, Sabra, Sabra.
correct. I don't know if you have it in Grenada, but
Okay, no, well, I'm,
it,
but
it,
I'm going to go look to see if we do.
yeah, and so that's the main product that we're targeting. The word Sabra, I mean, when I looked it up, apparently it means. I mean, at first I thought it was linked to Sabra and Shatila, which is the massacre committed by Sharon in the early 80s in Lebanon in the refugee camps. But apparently it means born in Israel. The actual in Hebrew, when you translate it, the word Sabra. I don't know if uh, Linda can assist in that, but it apparently means born in Israel. Somebody born in Israel. It's known as Sabra. But we also looked at the possible links between Rihanna and Puma. Puma has in the past been funding and supporting the Israeli football team, providing them with shoes and so on, just to promote the Puma product in Israel. And Rihanna has been collaborating with Puma, so that's something else we're looking at. Maybe because, as you know, Rihanna not just in the Americas and the Caribbean, but in particular in Barbados, because she's Barbadian, she's held in great reverence. In fact, she's now been designated a national hero of Barbados. And obviously, her collaboration with Puma is something we've been looking at as well. But as Linda has been pointing out, Israel has been weaponizing everything. They've weaponized winter by denying fuel to the Palestinians. They've weaponized food by denying food to them. They've weaponized water by denying them water. And they've weaponized medication it's absurd. This is genocide blatantly taking place before the world. And as I said, the orders of the ICJ have been so feeble and vacuous. It's pathetic. Pathetic. That's how I would describe their orders. I admire their reasoning in terms of the legal reasoning, and they went through all the right processes. But their orders are totally fallacious and vacuous.
How far, and we're out of time, so this is my final question. How far did you expect them to go?
But it's not so much expectation. I was hoping they would do the right thing, but unfortunately they didn't. As a lawyer, I know that there's no such thing as judicial impartiality. We saw that quite clearly in the Florida case with Al Gore and George Bush with the hanging shards. You remember all the democratically appointed Supreme Court judges supported Al Gore, and all the Republican appointed Supreme Court judges supported George Bush Jr. And of course, there were more Republicans appointed Supreme Court judges, so so they upheld Bush's thing. But this is the reality. I mean, obviously, it's not something that people speak about, but judges have their prejudices, their biases, their favoritisms. It's all dressed up in judicial rhetoric. There was this judge in England, the master of the rolls. His name escapes me. He was totally Downing, I think was his name, Lord Downing, totally opposed to trade unions. So any case that came before him to do with trade unions, he ruled against it. And unfortunately, as I said, in terms of the ICJ, I'm disappointed, but it's not unexpected.
All right. Ambassador Sobeh, I'd like to thank you for being on with me here on The Narrative, and Lalu Hanuman of the Caribbean Against Apartheid in Palestine. Thank you both for joining me on The Narrative. I look forward to have you on as we continue to highlight this issue, this genocide that is taking place in Palestine. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
All right. This is The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Farrier. More when we come back.